Hey, what's up everybody, Nexel here. Today we're playing Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, and we're going to be talking about the new Supernova Plus Plus illustrated Kingdom Hearts 3 Terra, Ventus, and Aqua banners that just dropped yesterday in Global. So as always, we're going to do our banner analysis, we'll talk about the medals, the draw odds, and finally my thoughts and recommendations on whether or not I think you should be pulling for any of these medals. Now, with any new banner, any new sale in the Moogle shop, or any new avatar board, you want to see how long you have to decide until that banner goes away. So in this case, we have until September 30th to decide if we want to pull for any of these. Now remember, it's always safe to wait until the last day to decide if you want to pull, because then you see everything that's available to you. So remember, September 30th, that's 15 days away, and there's a lot of stuff that could drop between now and then. So for example, we know that the Roxas, Lee, and Xion banners are going to drop sometime in the next 2 to 3 weeks. So if those medals are significantly better, then it would have been better to wait on this banner, see what that Roxas, Xion, and Lee had to offer, and then decide where you want to invest your jewels in. So I always recommend waiting until the last day, unless you know that it's going to help you pass something right now. I guess that's the only real caveat to why you shouldn't wait, but generally it's safe to wait. Now, in terms of how much it's going to cost you per pull, so it is a falling price deal, meaning that the more you pull, the cheaper it gets up until the 5th pull. 5th pull onwards is going to be 1,900 jewels, and considering that a regular banner costs about 3,000 jewels per pull, this is a pretty sweet deal. It means by that 5th pull, you are saving 1,100 jewels per pull, and that is always appreciated. Now, in terms of the banner, what do you get with every single pull? You get 9 Supernova Plus or higher medals, and this is just like the Sora, Riku, and Kairi banners that dropped about a week or two ago, where every single medal, minus the trade medal, is going to be a Supernova or higher, which is really good, because that means all the medals that you get are going to be tier 8, tier 9, or tier 10, and that is absolutely fantastic for sub slots, and you can sell them for draw points if your sub slots are full of tier 10s already. So it's a really good deal. Now, in terms of the pool of medals, unfortunately there's no Kingdom Hearts 3 Xion A for whatever reason. I feel like they just never brought that medal back, and I'm not really sure why. And you cannot get the Renovas, so you can't get this Terra, this Aqua, this Ventus, or this Xion from the illustrated Kingdom Hearts 3 Terra, Ventus, or Aqua banner, similarly to the Sora, Riku, and Kairi banners. Now, another thing is that the Sora, Riku, and Kairis don't exist in this banner either. So just keep that in mind, that there are a lot of medals in this pool, pretty much going all the way until illustrated Zexion, whose banner ended September 2nd. But there are a few exceptions. Now, in terms of the rest of the banner, you get 1 trait medal for the medal you're pulling for. So, for example, if you're pulling for Terra, you get Terra traits. If you pull for Ventus, you get Ventus traits. And then if you pull from Aqua, you get an Aqua trait. You also get 10 VIP coins with every single pull, which is good because in the avatar board, remember that the upright Renova medal, the combination Terra, Ventus, and Aqua medal, is available only through VIP coins. You cannot buy this medal with jewels technically. So remember, it's 280 coins in order to get 1 copy of this medal. So if you pull 10 times, you've got 100 VIP coins, so you still need 180 more. So I do recommend stacking your VIP coins until the end of that Renova banner, and then seeing if anything else is out that you want to spend your VIP coins on. If not, definitely aim to get the upright Renova, Terra, Ventus, and Aqua combination medal. Now, unfortunately, there's no gems. So remember, for the Sora, Riku, and Kairi, you got gems with every single pull. In this case, you don't get any of those, but you do get a Sora and Moogle B medal. And remember that you have to stack these in order to get the Flantastic 7. So the more that you pull, let's say you do 10 pulls on the Terra banner, you've got 10 of this Sora and Moogle B medal, and that gets you closer to getting the Flantastic 7. So really, really good. I actually prefer that over gems, because gems are pretty easy to come by. I mean, we get free gems almost all the time from the Union challenges. So I actually do like this a lot better. Now, finishing up the banner, it is going to be a 10 Mercy pull, meaning that you are going to be spending 20,400 jewels in order to get the banner medal guaranteed. Now, we'll go into this a little bit more with the draw odds. You do have a pretty high chance of getting it early, but we always aim for the Mercy. I always say it that if you can't Mercy the medal, don't pull for it, because there's no guarantee. I had to pull 10 times in order to get the Kairi, and that was increased odds. That was this banner right here. So remember that while the odds are increased, you always want to make sure you have enough jewels for the Mercy, and in this case, it's 20,400 jewels. Now, one big thing to note about this is that if you get the banner medal early, so for example, if you're pulling for Terra and you get the Terra medal early, the counter resets. So let's just say you got Terra on the 5th pull, then you have to do 10 more pulls to get a second copy of Terra. However, if you're pulling from the Terra banner and you get an Aqua on the 3rd pull, you're still guaranteed 1 copy of Terra within the next 7 draws. So just keep that in mind. If you get the banner medal early, it resets that counter. So starting off our TVA trio, we have Supernova ++ Illustrated Kingdom Hearts 3 Terra. Now, unfortunately, the Birth by Sleep trio are not the tier 11s that I was hoping they would be, so they are going to be tier 10. Terra is an upright power medal with a base strength of 45,494 before adding chips. Now, after chips, he reaches above 50,000, which is pretty much our new standard for medals. He's got a base defense of 16,739 and a flat multiplier of 22.8. Now, remember, it's flat. It means it doesn't matter how much HP you have. It doesn't matter where he is on the Keyblade. Every single time you activate this special attack, it's gonna crack that 22.8 multiplier. Now, sure, this number is high, and it's not affected by damage plus, which is good, but it's still not as good as Riku with his mastery ability. Now, 22.8 is generally around the higher end of multipliers, but when we look at the Riku card, remember, Riku has that new mastery skill. Now, what that mastery means is that based on the math that Roboloid and Ryuga-sen gave us, thank you so much for giving that, by the way. So after you factor in for mastery, a multiplier is effectively 20% higher. So when we look at Riku, sure, he's got a 20.6 multiplier flat, but when you're fighting speed enemies with that mastery ability, Riku's multiplier becomes about 24, which is actually higher than Terra's flat 22.8. So it is a high multiplier, but again, Riku with the mastery, when you're fighting speed enemies, is actually going to be an even higher multiplier. Looking back at Terra, he's got a gauge cost of 3, which is that nice little sweet spot where it's not too expensive. It means that you can have extra attack on this medal and just use a regular attack boost 13 max, and you're only spending 6 gauges, which is pretty easily recoverable by something like Supernova plus Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A or the Kingdom Hearts 3 Nominee with extra attack. So it's pretty good because it means you don't have to have an attack boost max SP gauge reduction skill in order to make this medal work. He does 13 hits, and in terms of his special attack, this is one of the big take-home points about this medal. He is a single target medal, meaning that if you're fighting a group of enemies and you activate this medal, you're going to have to decide which enemy you're going to want to hit. Now, generally, single target is not a good effect to have. There are a few scenarios where it's good, especially if you're trying to do something like knock out one enemy before knocking out another. So, for example, if you're fighting 2 enemies, one of them's a barrier master, and you don't want to knock it out because when you knock out a barrier master, it resets the enemy's debuff. So in that sort of case, you might want to knock out that first enemy before knocking out the barrier master. But on general, single target medals aren't very good. We saw this with Supernova plus Aced, who had a crazy multiplier. He had a high strength at the time, but unfortunately he just wasn't as good as things like Supernova plus Era that would hit all enemies. In terms of the buffs and debuffs, it is going to be self-buffing for 1 turn. That means that this medal on activation will take care of your general, your upright, and your power buffs and enemy debuffs, which is really good. But remember, he is single target. That means when you pick your enemy, only that one enemy is going to be getting the debuff. So really keep that in mind. In order to get all the enemies with -15 general, upright, and power defense, you're going to have to need something else like a Nominee. In terms of the rest of the buffs, again, for 1 turn, it's power medals plus 10,000 strength, which is pretty much our new standard. We did see it on the Riku that just came out. And then he gives special attack bonus plus 220%, which isn't as special because we rely on our Supernova attacks to give us plus 320%, and those effects do not stack. In terms of effects that the special attack does, it's count plus -0, nothing too particularly special. In terms of the Supernova attack, it hits all targets this time, and in terms of buffs and debuffs, it's going to be for 1 turn self-buffing. That means that the Supernova attack will take care of all enemies and yourself in terms of general, upright, and power buffs and debuffs, which is really good because that's buffing on command. It means that if you get debuffed by something like a barrier master, it's the middle of your turn, you just activate the Supernova attack and boom, all your buffs and debuffs are back and you are ready to continue rolling. In terms of other buffs and debuffs, he gives all power metals plus 12,000 strength, which again is pretty much our new standard for supernovas. And then he gives special attack bonus plus 320%, which is again just a standard that we have for tier 10s nowadays. In terms of effects, he really does nothing and just activates before turn 1 in PvP, which is pretty good because it means he will give you all the buffs and debuffs you need for power metals down the line. So next up is our boy Supernova ++ Illustrated Kingdom Hearts 3 Ventus, who is ironically the powerhouse of the 3 metals. He is a tier 10 just like Terra. He is upright speed with a base strength of 45,770. Again, after chips we're looking at above 50,000, which is our new standard for strength. He's got a base defense of 16,706 and a multiplier of 20.6, which is not bad. Again, we aim for metals around a multiplier of 20 to 21. But we do still have better multipliers. For example, the Kingdom Hearts 3 metals that came out before these illustrated metals had a multiplier that ranged pretty much between 19 going as high as 27. So we had better multipliers in the past. For some reason, they decided to decrease that. Activating Ventus is going to cost you 3 gauges, which is just like the Terra, and that's a good number because even with extra attack, you can still just use a regular attack boost max skill like attack boost 13 max and still be able to recover from that pretty easily. You don't need an attack boost max SP gauge reduction to get this medal rolling. The medal does 13 hits, and in terms of the special attack, unlike Terra, this one hits all targets. In terms of the buffs and debuffs, for 1 turn it is self-buffing, meaning that Ventus on activation will take care of your general, upright, and speed buffs and enemy debuffs, which is always good. He gives all speed medals plus 10,000 strength and a special attack bonus of plus 220%, which is pretty standard by today's medals. In terms of the effects, he does count plus -0, and this is really where Ventus shines, is that he has the mastery skill. Now let's go ahead and pull up the math that Roboloid and Ryuga-sen figured out for us. Again, thank you so much for being able to do that, but what we see here is that super effective plus mastery on ability does about 20% more damage to an enemy that the medal is strong against. So for example, if you're fighting against magic enemies, this Ventus is going to get mastery with the special attack, and that's a 20% more damage increase. So if we take his multiplier, which is 20.6 right now, and apply the 20% increase there, we're looking at an effective multiplier against magic enemies of 24.89, which is a very high consistent multiplier to be hitting. Now, in terms of the Supernova attack, for 1 turn, it hits all enemies and gives you some good buffs and debuffs, being able to self-buff again for general, upright, and speed. Again, it's good to have this on the Supernova attack because if you get debuffed for whatever reason, let's just say it's a really hard enemy, and after the 3rd attack, they just debuff you. You just activate Ventus' Supernova, and boom, you are ready to get rolling with the rest of your speed setup. He gives all speed medals plus 12,000 strength and all medals special attack bonus plus 320%, which is pretty much standards for today's tier 10s. In terms of the effects, nothing special, just activating before slot 1 in PvP, and just like the Terra, this is a good effect because it means you can activate the Supernova attack and then the rest of the speed medals have their buffs and debuffs taken care of. Now, wrapping up our medal analysis, we have my personal favorite, Supernova ++ Illustrated Kingdom Hearts 3 Aqua, and pretty much a good summary of what she does. She's just an upgraded version of Elsa, except Aqua has a better buff package. Literally, if we flip between the 2 cards, the effects are pretty much almost in line, like right to the T, which is pretty crazy. But as always, let's do our analysis. So Aqua is going to be a tier 10 upright magic medal with a base strength of 45,831, which oddly makes her the strongest of the 3 Birth by Sleep medals that we just got. She's got a base defense of 16,690 and a multiplier of 20.2, which is the lowest of the 3, but that's okay because her overall package is much more useful than the Terra or the Ventus alone. She's got a gauge cost of 3 to activate her special attack, which is that nice sweet spot where you don't have to have attack boost max SP gauge reduction in order to make the most of this medal. You can easily recover from a 3 gauge use, and even with extra attack, you can easily recover from a 6 gauge use with something like a Kingdom Hearts 3 Kyrie A or Kingdom Hearts 3 Naminé with extra attack. She does 4 hits, which could have been better because she does have some PvP utility with her special attack, and again, on average, we like to see a high number of hits when it comes to PvP utility with the special attack. In terms of the special attack itself, it hits all targets, and in terms of buffs and debuffs, for 1 turn, it is self-buffing for upright magic. That means Aqua's special attack is going to take care of your general, your upright, and your magic buffs and debuffs for the enemy, which is always a nice thing for a medal to have. She gives all magic medals after the special attack plus 10,000 strength. With extra attack, I didn't mention this with the other two, but that's plus 20,000 strength with extra attack. And then she gives special attack bonus plus 220%, which again is not as relevant as the supernova attacks, which give us 320%. Now, in terms of effects, this is really where Aqua shines above the other two. So she gives count plus minus 0, which is what the other two do as well. And then she has defense boost piercing 30%. Now, on average, that means every single time you activate this medal, only 1 of the 4 hits is going to be piercing defense, which is why we say a higher number of hits with a PvP medal is better, because then you get more hits that are piercing defense. So 1 hit piercing defense is not very good. In terms of the rest of the package, she gives magic metal reflection 100%, and this is still an absolutely broken ability to be introduced into the game. Literally, if you're going into a PvP week and the enemy is using all magic medals, if you activate this medal first, no matter what happens, you win that round. Magic Metal Reflection is also very good for PvE Coliseum, where you can rank higher by having the enemy hit itself with its own damage. Magic Metal Reflection was pretty much a mistake that they decided they had to keep in the game because they already released it, and it's part of the reason why I say medals like Kingdom Hearts 3 Anti-Aqua and Kingdom Hearts 3 Elsa still have their use, even though they're outdated. Now we have a new medal that gives you better buffs, better overall package, and it's up to date, which is really good. And then she also has next metal conversion into magic, which is useful for making monocolored setups. So for example, let's just say you have something like a power metal in the pet slot, and then you have this aqua in the 5th slot. You activate this aqua, the next metal, even though it's power, acts like a magic metal, and that means it's going to receive buffs from Aqua's special attack, which is always a good thing to have. It's really good utility for making monocolored setups from a multicolored Keyblade. In terms of the supernova attack, it hits all targets, and it is self-buffing, again taking care of general, upright, and magic buffs and debuffs. It gives all magic medals plus 12,000 strength, and special attack bonus plus 320%. Again, all standards for new tier 10s nowadays. Finally, in terms of effects, she triggers before slot 1, just like the Ventus and just like the Terra, which is good for setting up the rest of your Keyblade, making sure that that first medal always has buffs. So looking at the draw odds for the banner, one big thing to note is that when you pull for one of them, you have a chance of getting the other two. So for example, I plan on pulling for Aqua. If we look at Aqua's draw odds, there is a chance for us to get Illustrated Kingdom Hearts 3 Ventus and a chance for us to get Illustrated Kingdom Hearts 3 Terra. And that's good because the more medals that you want that are put in the pool, the higher your chances are of getting something that you want early. So let's go ahead and take a look at a graphic that I made for the Sora, Riku, and Kairi banners. So when we look at the Terra, Ventus, and Aqua banner, which are pretty much the same draw odds, the odds of you getting one illustrated medal per pull is going to be about 13%. That is literally 1 every 10 people on their first pull is gonna get an illustrated Kingdom Hearts 3 medal, and those are absolutely amazing odds in comparison to what we've seen before. So let's just say you pulled for the Terra, right, and you had to do 10 pulls. By that 10th pull, there was like a 70% chance that you would have gotten, if not the Terra, the Ventus, or an Aqua just along the way. And those are incredible odds. They are in your favor. There is more than a 50% chance of you getting an additional one along the way. And that's absolutely amazing. These draw odds are really good. Now, going back to the medals themselves, let's go ahead and talk about my thoughts and recommendations, starting with who I think should be pulling. So the first group of people I think that should pull are people that need Aqua's 100% magic metal reflection. Now, I know that Anti-Aqua is out, Elsa is out, but there's at this moment no consistent way to get them. This is a guaranteed within 10 pulls 100% magic metal reflection, and we talked about it during the Aqua analysis. That's undeniably one of the craziest mechanics in this entire game, is to do 100% magic damage reflection. It's pretty broken, and honestly, looking back at it, it probably never should have been made. It completely shuts down PvP setups. So let's just say your opponent only has magic metals, but all you brought into that fight was this one Aqua. You activate the Aqua, all that damage is getting reflected. They could have the best magic metals in the game, but it doesn't matter because Aqua's just going to reflect them. The only way to get around this magic metal reflection is by either converting attribute into something like power or just using a power or a speed metal. 100% magic metal reflection can shut down entire PvP setups. Not only that, but 100% magic metal reflection can be used to cheese your way into higher levels of Colosseum. So what some people like to do when they've reached the end of their Colosseum climb, they can't climb any higher, they're doing 1 damage to the enemy, they usually tend to find the one magic enemy that has a very high strength stat and a very low defense stat. And usually those enemies will also do only 1 hit that does a lot of damage. Now what people do in high ends of PvE Colosseum is that they'll find that enemy, bring just this metal and maybe something to debuff themselves like a pirate Sora, and then that enemy, once it hits you, even if you only did 1 damage every single metal, it's going to reflect 100% of that damage back to them. So those high-end Colosseum enemies can do like 10 billion damage with 1 hit. To be able to reflect all of that back, and then after 2 turns knock out that enemy, that's an easy way to get those extra ranks at the end of your Colosseum climb. Not only that, but that same mechanic can be used for PvE content for things like the Big Bonus Challenge. So let's just say the Big Bonus Challenge this month has a magic enemy that does a lot of damage with 1 hit. That makes Magic Metal Reflection 100% a very good strategy to knock that enemy out. Great cheesing ability right there. On top of that, Aqua also has Defense Boost Piercing 30%, which is extra utility for PvP. Keep in mind though that Aqua's Supernova attack does not do 100% Defense Boost Piercing, which makes her a lot worse than our best PvP metals like Kingdom Hearts 3 Ventus or Strike Form Sora. Aqua also has that next metal conversion, which is again good for just converting an entire Keyblade setup into just magic. So for example, let's go ahead and take a look at our Keyblade setups. Remember that next metal conversion can make a setup all 1 attribute. So let's take a look at the Divine Rose, for example, right? So we have this 4th slot here, which is magic, and this 5th slot here, which is speed. Having the Aqua here converts this speed metal into magic, so it'll still receive this speed multiplier, but it'll be doing magic damage. And that's important for when you're fighting like a really strong enemy that is power. You're going to want all your metals to be magic. But let's just say you just don't have a bunch of magic metals. Having next metal conversion makes it so that you can spend less, but effectively get 2 magic metals, even if you have like a magic and a speed metal. It's really solid utility to have. So who are the other groups of people that I think should pull? Another group of people that should pull are people who want to stay relevant in PvE Colosseum. And those people should be pulling for Illustrated Kingdom Hearts 3 Ventus because of that mastery ability. I can't stress this enough. Remember that having mastery on the special attack gives you an additional 20% damage. So let's just say you're fighting an enemy that has 100 billion bars of health. That extra 20% is an additional 20 billion bars of health gone, and that could make a big difference when it comes to pushing out damage. Remember that Ventus's multiplier is only 20.6, but mastery works when you're fighting against, in Ventus's case, magic enemies. So against magic enemies, that multiplier changes from 20.6 to 24.89, which is a really good multiplier. And then Ventus is just a solid metal overall. So even if you're not fighting magic enemies, he's still self-buffing. He still has a really decent strength stat. So Ventus and Aqua are really solid metals. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to Terra, he's definitely the worst of the 3, with really the big offset being that he's single target. It's very rare that we've seen single target metals do really well. For example, Supernova ++ Aced was single target, but he didn't see as much use as things like Supernova ++ Era. Looking at Terra, even if you had to use a metal that does next metal group attack, so for example, Ava has next metal hits all enemies, that's 1 slot that you had to decrease the damage on in order to increase the damage for another slot, and that's just inefficient. So unfortunately, Terra, even with his great multiplier, being single target is limiting, and it's just not as good as something like Riku, who has mastery and hits all targets, and with that mastery against speed enemies has a higher effective multiplier. But all in all, what do I think about these 3 banners? I don't think they're as good as the Sora, Riku, and Kairi banners that are out right now. Mainly because the Sora, Riku, and Kairi banners just have generally more utility than the Terra, Ventus, and Aqua banner. So for example, Sora literally covers PvP, PvE, and raids. That's great triple utility right there. Kairi gives all metal strength. So the Terra, the Ventus, and the Aqua, they're limited to their attribute. But Kairi's special attack and her supernova attack gives all metal strength, and that's generally more useful because then you could put Kairi off slot, let's say in like the second slot of Sleeping Lion, which is upright speed, but you can still get utility for the other speed metals because that Kairi still is going to buff them. And then like we said earlier, Terra is unfortunately not as good as Riku. However, just like the Sora, Riku, and Kairi banners, it's still the best banner format because after you pull, you're getting a lot of subslots and fantastic support medals. Just remember, the non-banner medals, so the medals that aren't Terra or Ventus or Aqua, the illustrated Kingdom Hearts 3 versions, there's no real good way to get traits even if you buy VIP. Even if you buy VIP in the Moogle shop, it's 500 jewels per trait. That's still 1,500 jewels every single PvE damage medal you want to make because you have to buy ground, aerial, and extra attack. If you want to spice it up and give the extra strength plus 2,000, that's 2,500 jewels per medal, and that can get very expensive when you're getting 9 Supernova Plus medals. So if you're free to play though, there's really no consistent way. So remember that you are getting multiple Supernova Plus or Supernova Plus Plus medals, but while they won't be up to par when it comes to traits, they can still fill subslots, you can still sell them for draw points, and that's still really good. You can also still use them as just generic buffers. So for example, if you get an illustrated Zexion, sure he won't have traits, but his Supernova attack is still going to give you plus 12,000 metal strength, which is still really good. So just like I said before, you don't get gems like the Sora, Riku, Kairi banner, but they're really easy to come by. But like I always say, it's best to wait until the last day unless you know for sure that one of these medals is going to help you pass content right now. But it's always best to wait till the last day because then you see everything that's available. And if they release the next game-breaking medal by the time these medals are still out, you don't want to miss out because you're out of jewels. So that's it for my thoughts and recommendations. I do want to just mention some general housekeeping stuff. So one thing I've been seeing a lot of people do lately is get really salty when they don't get the banner medal or an extra illustrated Kingdom Hearts 3 medal early. And I really just want to say that that's all luck based. You shouldn't feel salty about it. Again, we're aiming for the mercy. If you can't mercy the medal, don't pull for it. Even with these amazing banners, that motto still stays true. So while it's awesome if you do get one early, don't feel bad if you don't. That's just how the game is designed. You shouldn't feel bad just because it was unlucky. You know, it happens sometimes. It happens to me. It happens on my alternate account. I got Riku and only Riku, and it took all 10 pulls, and that's okay. Remember, you aim for the mercy. You don't aim for anything more than that. Anything more than that is just lucky, and if you get that, high five, that's awesome. But if you don't worry. Our standard is just make sure you can do the mercy. And remember that your jewels are the highest value item. So while these banners are great in terms of giving you subslots, in terms of great medals, remember that your jewels will always stay valuable. So if you decide not to pull, that's also okay. Having 20,400 jewels by the end of this that you didn't have to spend on a banner is still going to help you in the future. And lastly, remember, we do have the Roxas, Lee, and Xion banners coming later, so don't just waste all your jewels because if those medals are amazing, you don't want to find yourself in a place where you can't pull for them. But with that being said, that's all for now. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down in the comments below, and I'd be happy to answer when I have the time. If you'd like to join my Discord, get some additional help off hours, I also post all my banner analysis on there early before the video comes out. Definitely join the Discord. It is right below the screen. Just type it into your URL and you should be good to go. But that's all for now. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, until next time, take it easy.